So welcome everyone. Tonight is going to be really great for a lot of you that are just starting out and don't know where to begin. We have Mia Peace here that is so wonderfully decided to volunteer some of her time to spend with us, teaching us how to create your very first website. So I'll let Mia introduce herself and we'll kick things off.
So, hey guys, some of you I've already started talking to, but I'm Mia, for those who don't know. I am actually a disabled mom of four. I am a part-time wheelchair user. And my disability story is actually part of why I got into coding. I am currently in Kenzie right now for UX design and front-end engineering, which they call their UX engineering course. I go full-time, and I also run a couple of squads here in CK. I donate my time because I love CK like a passion, and I help out with my school as well. So this is kind of just right up my alley of things I like to do. I'm a very helpful and outspoken person, so you guys are always welcome to bother the crap out of me because you can't actually bother me. So that's who I am.
Thanks, Mia, for joining in and for sharing your story. I think in the early days of everyone's journey, you want to have examples of people who are your peers. There might be a few steps ahead of you, but they're just figuring things out as you all are, whether you want to become a designer or an engineer, or if you want to work in tech. And having access to Mia is great because after this meeting, she's still on the app. So you can join the Moms Who Code squad, you can join other groups that she's part of, and just keep in touch with her. I know for this session, we talked about starting your first website. Can you tell people what it was like for you to build your first website?
Are you talking about the website that I shared with you, or are you talking about my very first website?
Well, maybe you can talk about both, like your very first website. What was that feeling like?
So my very first website that I ever built was for a family friend. I was a freshman in high school, and my computer science teacher had just gotten frustrated because I was moving through course material too quick. So he's like, here, do coding, because that was sure to slow me down, but it didn't. And so I got into it, and then one of the friends of the family wanted a business page, and man, I struggled with that so much because it was one thing to learn it, but then it was a whole nother thing to just put it into motion. And I used all the resources. Like, this was right when Google was really becoming a thing, and I had the textbooks and just everything, and I was just pouring over it. It probably took me about 3 weeks to make that web page, and that thing was the bane to my existence. I will never go look for it. I hope that it doesn't exist anymore. I really hope they took that down. Like, it was an experience, but I never want to look back on it. Um, and that was a totally different experience than what I had building my current website that I have, because that's in HTML5 and the newest version of CSS. And that was just, it was gorgeous. Being able to take the things that I was learning and put them in and see how they worked and play with them and really just create something that was mine. Like, nobody else could say, oh, I did that for you. No, I did that. I made that. That's my design. That's my brain out there in the world. And it's now turned into this little blog post that I keep, and I do blogs once a week on it. And it's just been this really cool experience. And that's the experience I want to share with people, because the resources that we have in this day and age, they're just astronomical. And I want people to know, like, you got people, you got websites, you got free resources, and they are in freaking plenty. So we're going to use some of those resources today.
Awesome. Yeah, and for people who are joining, I think we have 67 people on the call now. Welcome to this workshop. We're gonna cover how to use HTML and CSS to get your first website online. Mia is one of our community members who's gonna dive into it. I think we're gonna leave about 20 minutes for questions at the end, but I know Mia created a whole plan on how she did it. So Mia, do you mind jumping in and showing people what does it actually take to build a website?
No, I actually have everything pulled up, so I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. And we can get going. So a couple things that I wanted to talk about while we're doing this. I specifically use Visual Studio Code for all of my coding. I think it's important that you know which which program you're using. There's a bunch of them out there. I like Visual Studio because it's free, it's easy to use, and it helps walk you through a couple of the things. Another thing that I'm going to tell you that I didn't have open before is this. I have a folder that has all of my current projects. So like this is our CK project, this is what we're working on today, but I have different projects that I have working on, and they each have their own folder. Being a little bit organized with your code will help you in the long run. So let's go ahead and jump in, and I will show you guys how to do this. So basic HTML, when you write a code for a web page, your first page needs to be called the index. The index, being in the name, tells wherever you're going to upload this to that this is your home page, that this is the page that it needs to direct to first, and that this is going to be your little home screen. Now, today we're only going to be building a little home screen, but it's still going to be kind of fun. And I'm going to show you how to make it all pretty. I like to build my pages simultaneously, so I will also make the CSS for this. And I like to cheat. I name my CSS the same thing as I name my HTML, so I always know which pairs go together. Like I said, organization is key.
Yeah, before we jump out further into HTML and CSS, if this was someone's first day on Career Karma and they're just hearing the words HTML and CSS, can you give them like a quick example of what is HTML and what is CSS, and how does it relate to a web page?
So HTML and CSS, I like to compare it to a meat and potatoes dinner. HTML is your meat. That's going to be all of the things, all the words, all of the pictures, all the everything that you're going to put into it. And then your potatoes, which is your CSS, is what makes it look pretty. It's your style sheets. It's where you say, oh, I want my background to be this color, and I want my text to be this color, and I want my links to be this color. It allows you to personalize the experience based on what you want people to feel when they go to your web page.
Awesome. And for those of you who might have messed around with their MySpace profile back in the day, you were probably doing a lot of CSS, and we're actually doing some coding. So shout out to all of you. You don't have to say who you are, but I know there's a lot of people who used to do that. And yeah, sorry to interrupt, Mia. Keep going.
No, you're good. That's a good point that I hadn't quite thought about, because, you know, I always forget that people are still on day ones, because like it happens, but that doesn't mean that they're not important too. So thank you for that. I'm about to show you one of my favorite things about VS Code here, though. They have this little quick key called an Emmitt abbreviation, and this will set up your web page for you. Don't worry, I'll explain what it's doing, but I wanted to show you guys this nice little feature. So you put an exclamation point in, just one, and you press enter. And your meta is there. Your meta is what tells the browsers what they're supposed to be displaying, how it displays. And what I mean by that is every screen's a little bit different. And if you want the information to display correctly, you have to set it so that it will. And in HTML, you do this inside of the head. And you have the character set, which tells what type of characters you're using, the viewport, which is the screen size, and you set this to 1, so that way you're using the entire screen. And then compatibility, i.e. in Edge, whereas it also works with Chrome and other things. And then this document part right here is actually the title that will be displayed in your little tabs. So we are going to go ahead and call this CK project. Now we have a little title for a web page. And that is just the beginning, my friends. So here's a fun fact. When you have an HTML and a CSS, you have to link the CSS page. Like I said, I like to work on both things together, so that way I don't lose track of what elements I'm working with. It makes it a little bit easier for me. Now, I always put my link right underneath the HTML. It's where it's suggested to be. I don't suggest moving it around very much. But all you do is write link, and then you do reference. I might have to cheat on this one and look. See, this is the beautiful thing about saving all of these.
Also what developers do. You're not expected, for people on the call, I hear this all the time, like people tell me they can't memorize code or they're not good at memorizing things. You're actually not expected to memorize anything, because you can always Google for things, right? So
yeah, W3 schools.
Feel free to Google for it, Mia, too. Like there's no expectation
Oh yeah.
to just remember everything from scratch.
Well, and I specifically refuse to just learn it or have it memorized because I want people to know that it's okay. So this is the link that I'm actually talking about. Link REL
Yeah.
is what we're looking for. So now I'm going to move back over to CK
And as
project.
Mia is doing this, just so people have some context, when you go to a web page, the way the web page looks, all the rules in terms of how big the font should be, what the background is, all of those rules are specified inside of a file called like the CSS file. In this case, it's index.css. And in terms of what are the elements like a navigation bar, you might have an image, you might have some text. All of those live inside of the index.html file. And the reason these files are important is these files contain instructions so a computer knows how to display your page. So what Mia is doing right here is she's basically telling a computer that I want to have this text displayed in a certain way. Does that make sense, folks? Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Perfect.
Good. And you guys can totally put any questions in chat as we go. And when we get to the Q&A portion, I will try to get to as many as we can. I don't want you guys to try and hold on to questions till the end because I know that sometimes they can get forgotten. So put them in the chat and we will go through them as we go, okay? So now let's go ahead and build a header. Now this is actually going to go across the top when we finish with the CSS, but I'm going to build a little header that just says, we'll do an H1 element to make it really nice and big and bold, and we'll say hello. Because we're going to introduce ourselves to the internet, people. And we're just going to leave that in the header. And I'll show you how to make that look pretty here in a bit. And then let's say we want to add a little navigation bar. So let's do a div, which is a type of element that just contains things. And you can move it around the screen using CSS. But we're just going to make a little div and we're going to call it ID, let's say nav, because it's going to be our little navigation system. Not that we have much to navigate to, but we can make it look nice. And then I'm going to add an image to it. And this is where it gets fun. The image, we're going to call our nav image. Now, notice that I wrote NAV in lowercase, and then when I added the second word, which was image, I capitalized the first letter of the second word. That is called camel case, which is something that's very important for you to learn for HTML and CSS. It is the proper way to name things, and it will allow you to properly be able to reference them later in the CSS sheet. Now we're going to do an SRC, and here's the fun. We're going to pop open some Google. We're going to ignore that page if it will let me. And we're going to say we want a hello picture for giggles. I'm going to move that back up there. And we're going to go into images. Now, when using Google Images, please be careful. You want to make sure that you're getting it from an open source and not stealing somebody's hard-earned, paid stuff. So please make sure that when you click on these things that you make sure that you're kind of looking, and like if it says download free images, then you're usually probably in a space where you can go ahead and snipe that image. You have two options here. You can use the URL for the image, or you can save the image to your computer. I'm going to go ahead and use the URL. So I always open the in a new tab because I'm kind of finicky about how I do things. And this is a very big image, so this is going to be fun. And then we're going to do copy image address. And I do this just because sometimes when you copy it straight out of Google, it likes to be a little finicky with you. So we're going to take that and we copy it into where the SRC is. It's super, super long, super, super complicated. It just likes to make us work for it. Moving that over. Okay. So then we go enter for our next part, and we're going to add an alt. Now what the alt does for any image is this is what's going to show up if the image fails to load. It is also what gets read off if somebody who is blind is using a speaking device to navigate the internet. So alt is a very important part of anything you do with images. So then we're just going to say it's a hello sign. And then we close, so that way the image actually works. Now, one of my favorite features about Visual Studio is their live server. So occasionally you can go through and actually check how everything looks. Now see, we have our little hello up here in our header, and then we have our really big image down here. We're already starting. Now this isn't actually available on the internet. This is just off of our server for our computer. So we can check it as we go without having to worry about other people laughing at us. And it makes it a little bit more safe when you're playing with this. So now I am just going to add a paragraph element. And I'm not going to ID it. And we'll just say, hello world. I am happy to be here. And now we have quite a few little elements going on. We have a header, we have an image inside of a div element, and we have a little paragraph going on. So we have some stuff that we can play with now. And again, I'm going to go over here and reference this and just make sure that everything popped up. Yep, see, we've got our text down here, we've got our picture, and we've got our little hello. Now we're going to go and we're going to go over to our CSS. And this is where it gets fun. Now, I am a big fan of the morbid and dark, so we're going to make this pretty much like I make most of my personal web pages. Now, body. If you notice, everything that we did in here was in between the body elements, top and bottom. We call those elements because body is an element in and of itself by just putting body up here. Then we will add specifications. What do we want to do with it? So I want the background to be black. And yes, you can just type the color in. There's another way you can do this though. You can go RGB, which is red, green, blue, and you can specify each of those elements. And remember your semicolons at the end, otherwise the code will not operate correctly. Now, if our background is black, obviously our text now has to be a different color or we're never going to see it. So let's go ahead and make our text color by typing color. We'll go ahead and make that white.
And I want to point out that as Mia is typing things, you can notice that her editor actually auto-suggests like properties, right? Mm-hmm. That's one of the other perks that a developer has. Like, you're not expected to memorize things. Also, since the computer likes to, like, the computer needs to have code given to them in a specific way, right? If Mia, for instance, says background dash color or color, like, or another phrase, then the computer is not gonna know what it is. So it has to be specific background, and there's a colon at the end. On the next line, there's a word color, and she needs to give the color white, you know? So those are the rules that as a developer, you learn over time. So you're able to like tell the computer exactly in the same language that a computer can understand.
Or you can be like me and just be stubborn and get, you know, the coding elements just built into the program that you're using.
Yeah.
Because it's a bit easier, and when you do with Visual Studio, instead of having to memorize each element, you're memorizing how things work together. And when you memorize how things work together, you can actually pick up coding a little bit faster, and it makes it a little bit nicer to be able to learn multiple coding languages. So here's another nice little thing about Visual Studio is I now have my HTML sitting over here and my CSS sitting over here. So I can look at both of them at the same time, which makes it really easy when you're going back and forth deciding what you're going to do with certain elements. So our next element that we're going to play with is the header. Again, it's an element, so we can just call it what it is. And with our header, we'll make the background, let's go purple for giggles. And then we'll make the text color black on this one, since obviously we want it to show up. Okay. And then let's do something fun. We're gonna do text align. And this is like the justify left align, right align that we're used to using in like Microsoft Word. So for this, we're going to center it. And now I'm going to show you guys what it looks like so far. So you can kind of see the progress that we're making. I do have to refresh it though, or it's just not gonna like me today. It happens. You will find that sometimes code just doesn't like to work with you and you have to problem solve it, and that's okay. Now see, here's an interesting thing. Why is it not working? So let's go back and check our links. So style sheet. I bet you I messed up on that. So let's open a folder and go check our work. Actually, you know what? We're gonna Google it because we're gonna go look at one of my favorite websites for reference material. So what we're gonna Google is how to link CSS to HTML. And press enter. And this, w3schools.com, is one of my favorite references to use once you're actually learning HTML and CSS, because it takes you directly to what you're looking for instead of trying to explain it all over again. So it goes through internal CSS and then it goes through external CSS. And see, I put a type in here and that's not necessarily necessary. But it goes through and shows you all the different ways you can do stuff and kind of shows you fun little things about CSS in and of itself. So we're going to go ahead and go back over here. And I'm going to go ahead and take out the type because I know it's not necessary. And then it took out the reference too. So we'll type that back in. And then we'll save it. And we'll see if that works. Look, we fixed it. And now we have space up here. Now, I don't really like that space. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. And we're going to go back over here into the header. And I don't really want my header to move. So I'm going to position it fixed so it doesn't move. But with this, I can now specify some stuff. Like, I don't want there to be any space in between the top of my header and the top of the screen. So that will be set to 0. I also don't want that on the left. Don't want it on the right. So now let's go look and see if that did what I wanted it to. Oh, look, now it takes up all of this space up here, which is exactly what I wanted it to do. So now we can go ahead and move on to the next part. The next part is going to be dealing with this nice little div. So I'm going to move that back over so we can see what we're doing. Okay, so we're going to do this part next. Now, the div has an ID of nav. For IDs, you do hashtag to call it, or pound sign, or whatever you guys learned it as, and nav. And now my CSS knows that it is calling for this part of the HTML. And we'll go ahead and open that up. Now, say I want to make the div, let's do background. We'll go obnoxious and do pink. Not a pink fan. And we'll leave that. Well, we can set the height. So let's go ahead and set the height to 200 pixels. And we'll set the width to the same because I like boxes. Now, we can also use this same method to call the image in and of itself. So again, if we look over here, we can see that the ID for the image is called nav image. Now, obviously, we're not using this to navigate, but camel case was important. So for this, I just want to make the image smaller than the space in which it is. So I'm going to go ahead and go height 150 pixels and width 150 pixels. It's important to say here that when you have images, you can change one aspect, either the height or the width, and it will auto render the image. And what I mean by that is it auto sizes it, so it'll keep it in the same ratio, but size it for whichever element of it that you're changing. Now, with that, the image is a little boxy and, you know, some people don't like that. So I'm going to add a border radius to it. And what this does is it curves the edges of the picture. And you can decide what you want to do with that. If we did it at the whole 150 pixels, it would actually make the image into a circle. But you can play with that and figure out where you want it to go. I often play with it just to see how it changes the way the image looks. I usually stick around 25, but because it's a 150 pixels, I'm going to go ahead and make this 50 pixels. I am also going to make the border dashed and purple because I like those things. Certain elements within CSS, instead of having to specify each element individually, you can actually specify in line with the main part of what you're changing. It's a really cool little feature. Oh, look, now our image is up here, but it's stuck behind our header. We should probably put a margin above that. What a margin is margin is the space outside of your element, while padding is the space inside of your element. Very important difference in those two things. So our div, which is nav, needs to move down. So we are going to add a margin to the top of, we'll say 75 pixels. Sometimes it's guesswork. I like using guesswork because it means that I'll be more accurate in the future when I have to eyeball things. And it's not quite down. Let's go ahead and move that to 100.
By the way, yeah, I just want to do a time check. So we're about 20 minutes, we're 30 minutes into the workshop, about 30 minutes left. I wanted to see if, were you able to, do you think you'll be able to show us how to host the website online?
I can, and I'm actually going to host this website. I have
Perfect.
3 more things I think that I'm going to do, and then I will show you guys my favorite hosting website.
Great. I just want to make sure we get to it, but it sounds like you're on top of it, so keep going.
Yeah, I try to be. So we've got all this, but our nav image is now sitting up and to the left, and it kind of looks weird. Let's go ahead and do my funnest thing, which is centering it. Now, when you're centering an image inside of something else, you go margin and you go auto. And what this tells the computer to do is to make everything equal. So then we go back here. If it wants to play with me, it should work. But sometimes you got to go in manually. We can also do this by, I don't think that one works. Let's see, margin. So margin starts at top left. So we'll do, well, top. So we'll do, what do we got? We got 50, it's 25 pixels on each side. And the reason I'm showing you guys this particular thing is that sometimes you're going to find that you're going to get frustrated with it because it may not work the way you want it to, and that's okay. But see, now it looks a little wonky. Kind of like it being a little off center though. So there's that. Now, if I want the nav element to do the same thing, we can set each margin individually as well if you really want to do it longhand. You can go left and then bottom and everything else. But there's also another trick. You can go back up to your body and go text, align, center. And what it tells is that you kind of want everything to center. Now we go back over here. See, this is centered, and my little div element is still sitting over here being a poo. So, it happens. And I kind of like playing with it sometimes.
Hey, Mia, I have a question. Isn't there something that you can do with border box and then do the margin 0 auto?
You can. But with this being real basic, I'm trying to go over a little bit of the more basic stuff that'll get you there. Because when I built my first website, I didn't know about that. So we're kind of trying to do this a little bit old-fashioned. So bear with me.
Okay.
Now how am I going to move this over? What if I do margin left. And let's do, see if this one will work today. So what this is I did view with, so it's talking about the actual screen in and of it. I'm gonna see if that works today. I've been having some problems getting that to work. Now see, it's all the way over here. And I like that. But we are trying to get it a little bit centered. So I'm gonna remove some of that and say, let's go ahead and do 45. Now, when you do this for a specific thing, this is gonna show up this way for this, but if you should pull it up on mobile, it might show up a little bit different. So that is something to be aware of. But we kind of have a little bit of a framing, and we can tweak this and play with it a little bit more. But we can also post it. And one of the great things about posting your web page is when you're having particular issues with some of it, you can actively show people what you're having issues with. So we're going to go to my favorite, which is who currently hosts my page. And it's Netlify. I like them because they're free. I like them because deploying things is really, really simple and really, really easy. But I'm going to go ahead and log in. Now, obviously, you guys will have to sign up, and this shows my little website. Now, move this. I think we just do here. No, let me go back and read this. Ah, there it is. Want to deploy a new site without connecting. Now from your main page, you can deploy an entirely new site by dropping your site folder here. So again, what I went over at the beginning is when we go in and we have all of our stuff organized and it's all saved, we can take it and pop it over here. And it'll give you some fun little stuff here, but we can always check and make sure that it pops up the way we want it to. And look, we actually have a website now that's popped up. Now, one of the cool things
That
is
literally
you can go
took
in.
less than a minute, right?
Yeah, no, and even for my page, which I'll show you guys here in a second, my page has multiple pages, multiple blog posts, and it still takes less than 2 minutes for it to deploy, even at the state it's in now.
Yeah.
I would redeploy it for you guys, but I'm tweaking it. So anyway, so you go in here, and if you go to your domain settings, you can actually go down here and change the site name. And as long as you leave Netlify in it, it's free. So we're going to go ahead and name this CK Project. If it's not taken. It's not. And there we go. We have our own domain. We have now created something that is online and people can access it. And we can always go back and tweak it. And so I will show you that as well. So you go to your deploys section and you'll just update it down here. So say, I really, really, really don't like the pink. What if we did an orchid, which is a purple pink, but you know, all the same. So we changed that and I want to deploy it on my site now. So we're going to go into our site. We go back to our folder and we just drag and drop it again. Wait a second and look, the time updated. And then we can click on it to make sure that it did the little change. And as you can see, it's a little more purple than it was pink. So that's how you get all that nice stuff done. And eventually, if you play with it enough, you'll end up with something like this. And this is actually my personal webpage that I created. It's been tweaked a little bit. So I now have background images. I have a little GIF here. And the text actually, when you first look at it, types out. That's some JavaScript. But if you cycle through, it actually does have quite a bit of information. That's my about page. I have my contact page. So if any of you ever want to get a hold of me, here's all the fun ways that you can get a hold of me, and they're all linked in my webpage, and I will be dropping that link in the chat unless somebody beats me to it. And then I have all my blogs. So I write blogs every week for my schooling, and I upload them here so that people can kind of go through the journey with me. One of the other projects that I'm working on that kind of shows the growth is I'm actually working on my portfolio page, and this is what it looks like so far. I haven't quite gotten most of the elements working, but I did want to be able to show you guys just kind of how the development has gone and where we're getting to. So I hope that was helpful for everybody, and if you have any questions, now is your time.
I have a question.
Hit me.
The Netlify looks a lot simpler than WordPress. Do you know what the difference is and like why someone would want to use WordPress instead of Netlify?
WordPress has a lot of different elements inside of it that make it simpler for people who don't know a lot of coding. So if you're really not familiar with coding and coding really isn't your jam and you just want to make it easy for yourself, WordPress can be a really great resource for that. But since we're all coding here, it's almost better to kind of challenge yourself to go through Netlify. And there's other websites out there that will be available for you to upload to. Netlify is just the one that I personally use. And of course, as we know, all the things that I'm passionate about, I just talk about a lot. So that's why I shared that one.
Yeah, and I would compare WordPress like driving like automatic and building your own HTML, CSS website as driving manual.
Mhm.
Ultimately, all of you, if you're on the journey of like teaching yourself how to code, it's gonna be challenging for you to get a job telling someone that you build a website using WordPress, because it's a lot of WordPress is kind of like drag and drop building a website, whereas doing something like what Mia just did, she actually had an idea and she's able to customize every single thing about her website, even though it's very simple now, but you have full control over what the page looks like.
And
Yeah,
it's easier to
Netlify
build.
seems way better. It seems way better. Like, and you can do JavaScript on there also?
Yes, you can do JavaScript. I personally know that they do also host for like Python and React. So there's a lot of languages that they work with. They also have form submissions. So if you aren't at a place to like have your own server or use your computer as your main server, you can actually do form submissions on there. So like on my contact form, in my contact, you can drop your email and Netlify will collect that information for me and it builds it into a form for me. So that way I don't have to build that somewhere else to collect that information. And they have walkthroughs for that. So please don't think that you have to figure that out by yourself. They show you exactly how to do it.
Thank you.
Folks, and before we open it up for questions, we also want to make an announcement that what we would like everyone to do is watch the recording again. We're going to share the recording. We're going to share all the links inside of our app on discussions.
Mhm.
So you can follow all the steps again and build your own website. If there is one takeaway tonight, is just we want you to build something, even if it's just a single word with your name on it and it says I'm an engineer, right? But try to do it today, tomorrow, or this weekend. And once you get it on the web using Netlify or Netlify, please take the URL and a screenshot of your web page and post it inside of Career Karma. This way you can hold yourself accountable and we can hold you accountable and we can see all of the amazing things that all of you create over the next few days. So if you can do that, that would be amazing, okay?
Your first step is going to be messy and it's not going to look pretty, but it is so important that you take that first step because every step afterwards is like running downhill.
Yeah, and perfection is the enemy of great, or it goes something like that. But basically, don't try to make your website perfect, right? The best thing you can do is just get it out there, push yourself outside the comfort zone, and share it with other people. The whole point of you learning how to code is sharing it with others. And now you have a link, you can share it. Weeks from now, you can build a different website, or you can improve your website, and you'll see how much you've grown in a week. And the last thing I'll ask you all as we open it up for questions is to post your website ideas in the chat. If you have website ideas, please post it in the chat. And with that said, let's open it up for questions in the last 20 minutes. Michael, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Hi, how you doing? Thank you for this opportunity. First of all, I do understand some of HTML, and of course, I have my website I am building and of course implementing CSS. But I want to ask, how easy was it for you to learn the CSS positioning properties? Because, and then how were you able to, how easy was it again for you to learn how to use pixels? You know, that part is one of the places I actually had, you know, because every engineer, obviously, you would hit a block. You would definitely hit a rock and you have to figure out how things work and etc. Well, how easy was it for you and how did you overcome that challenge?
So I'm really happy you asked that question because CSS positioning is still the bane to my existence to this day because it can still be really frustrating sometimes when you get certain elements of positioning mixed up. They have flex and flex containers and grids and all these different things. And so I just really, really encourage you guys to go ahead and like go to the W3 schools because it wasn't until I found them as a resource and their explanation of positioning that I even started to get a grasp on it. And now as you can see, regularly use them. But to answer the other part of your question about pixels, pixels and me have always been a friend. And the way that I think about it is for most cell phones, uh, it's actually 600 pixels across, which is weird. Now, not all cell phones are the same. Not all things are created equal. But when you start playing with pixels, and that's why I really encourage playing with pixels and trying to guess at it, you'll start to get a gauge for what the distance is. And to really be able to understand anything, you have to play with it first. So to better understand the pixels, honestly, all I did was I put in 10 pixels and saw what it did. And then I put in 25 pixels and saw what it did. And I literally spent an entire day just playing with pixels. And now they're my preferred method of moving things around because I understand them better. So I hope that answered your questions.
Michael,
Yes, it did. Thank you so much. It did a lot. Okay, I actually use the W3 and MDN, Mozilla and MDN as well to
Yeah.
get most of this, stuff. It's just sometimes very crazy, but what I actually plan on doing is take a whole week just to learn padding,
Mhm.
bordering, and all those other stuff. And perhaps hopefully, but I would like to encourage. I mean, it would be great if you guys can do like um, tutorials online where you can start from the very basics of HTML. I don't know if it's something that you guys might intend to do like a subscription or something like that, because as much as I know HTML and CSS, I want to start all over again with a group of people.
Right.
It helps, yeah, it helps a lot as well. So thank you all so much.
Yeah, another thing that I'll tell you too, especially because you're in that learning section, is I operate by a 5, 20, and 30-minute rule. So if I can't figure something out by myself in the first 5 minutes, then I will go online and look for about 20 minutes. And if I can't figure it out then at the 30-minute, 25, 30-minute mark, I will ask for help from a mentor, from a trusted friend, from somebody whose website looks better than mine because I'm confused, or from a teacher or a facilitator if you're in a boot camp. So um, that's just a little helpful rule for any type of learning, especially when you're learning a new coding language.
yeah, and I want to also shout out. So Mia, she's a student now at Kenzie. Um, Kenzie has a free prep course that actually
Mhm.
covers HTML and CSS. Um, the way we want you to think about your journey on Career Karma is like you can pull from multiple learning resources. You can watch this workshop, you can read a blog post, you can do multiple prep courses. But each time you learn about HTML and CSS, you learn something new and you're adding that tool to your toolbox. And so sign up for the Kenzie free and check out HTML and CSS, and don't just fall into the into the pitfall of watching tutorials and not doing. If you learn
Mhm.
something, bring it back to your website. You might learn how to do a slider on a page or make something like a drop down menu. If you learn about it, think of a way of incorporating it into your website so you can implement it and actually bring it to life. Um, Also, I think there was a person on the call in the chat. Ralph asked, "Can you use Ruby language to code your own dairy website as well?"
As far as I know, yes. I will never profess to be a Ruby fanatic because I've tried dabbling in it, but it's not really where I'm going with my coding career. I'm going more towards React and JS query. So as much as I'd love to answer that question fully, it's not really my expertise, and I wouldn't feel right trying to answer it as though it were.
And I can weigh in. Thanks, Mia, and I can weigh in as well. A lot of beginners, they might be learning Python or Ruby, and then they jump to HTML and CSS or JavaScript. And as you start a new tutorial, there's like a new combination of one of those technologies that people are learning. Uh, what it comes down to is that um, think of a website as the front end and the back end, the front end being what the user sees, and the back end being all the logic that the user doesn't see. okay? And so every single website online uses technologies like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So it doesn't matter if you are a Ruby developer or Python. Python and Ruby are backend languages, which that if Mia had, let's say she had a login functionality on her website, and so she would have to validate if the user is who they say they are. So she can write the backend using Python or Ruby or a bunch of other languages, even JavaScript. But the front end, what the user actually sees is always written with the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So you don't lose anything by learning those three technologies, starting with HTML and CSS, because you're
Go
gonna
take a nap.
and they tend to
Bed.
they also tend to be easier technologies to learn than learning a programming language. Does that answer your question? Okay. Cool.
So that actually leads into a really cool thing is I went in for UX engineering, which means that I work specifically in front end, whereas software engineers most often work in back end. And one of the biggest differences in this is I work between our clientele or our users and the company and the website, whereas software engineers work between the company and the website and the server. And it's an important distinction to make because if you aren't really a people person and you don't want to be dealing with clients, then design should not be where you go, because we do a lot of research, a lot of hands-on interaction with the clientele to really understand what we're building for them and what they need. If that's not for you, then software engineering is where it's at. But on the other hand, if you want to interact with clientele, because obviously I'm an extrovert and I like talking to people and I like building things for people, so I decided to go into design so that not only could I make my creations come to life, but I could also create for other people.
Yeah. Cool.
Are there any other questions?
Yes. Hi, y'all.
Hey,
Keisha.
Hey, so my question is, can I use, and I don't even know if it's considered a real website, but can I use a website that I built that can be accessed from a local file? Like it was a project given to me by Programming Hub when I was just messing with that until I started boot camp. And so I have like a really bare bones, I guess you can call it a website. Can I use that? And if so, do I need to make any changes to the code?
I would have to look at it to really answer, but honestly, as long as you name it along the lines of index.html and you contain it inside of a folder so that way you can upload it, especially for sites like Netlify, you should be able to upload that rather simply, especially if it's already pre-written. As long as you follow basic coding rules, and I know you know them because you and I have talked a few times, you should be able to upload it relatively easy.
Okay. I'll give it to you later. I think I can.
Like you know how to get a hold of me. I'm always around.
It's in a folder, but I gotta double check a couple things. But yeah, I pretty much built it from scratch, and then that's why I put in the chat earlier. W3 Schools is a good resource because then when I couldn't get the answer I needed from Programming Hub, I remember that people gave that as a resource in the Career Karma app, and so I got on, and I was just up at night, like I gotta find the answer. So that's all I needed to know.
Okay. I wanted to give a big shout out to Nikisha because she actually has powerhoused through and is the epitome of what Career Karma is for. She's self-learning and really battling some personal stuff that's going on, but she has never given up coding. And I have watched this woman dig herself out of the trenches a few times. So like, you guys, no matter what you're going through, you can get through it. You just got to have determination and a plan and use your resources.
yeah.
I have another question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I saw someone else post in the chat earlier about copywriting. Is that something to be concerned about? And if so, like, how do we need to look at that? Because I don't want somebody stealing my stuff because I'm probably going to build it based on like what you did, like for school, and I want to keep it.
So one of the things that I put on my personal site is my little copyright symbol that lets people know that this is mine and that I expect that it will be mine. And it's an and copy, and then it's the and signed copy, and then the semicolon, and then your whatever your name is or whatever your sign is for your copyright. That's how you put your copyright symbol out there so people know that it's copyrighted and they can't just plagiarize it. Yeah, like Antonio put in the chat.
Yeah. And I would also say, as you're building your first pages, I wouldn't worry about getting sued.
Yeah.
Like the main thing is just get something built, get it out there, and like start creating, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, copyright can be this whole big thing that you could be worried about, but honestly, if you're just building your first pages, it's not like you're going out there and getting 500 million views, so most people aren't going to care if you use some of their stuff to just learn and design. And as you get bigger, you'll learn how to do everything. I mean, it's just a constant learning process. It's never stagnant.
Yeah, absolutely. And Natasha had a question too in the chat. Natasha, can you unmute yourself, or would you like me to read your question? Oh, so let me read her question. I'm not sure if she's near a microphone, but I think Natasha had a question about interviewing with the bootcamp. What kind of questions would you recommend people ask during those interviews?
So when I was choosing my boot camp, I really delved deep inside myself to try and figure out what was important to me. Scheduling, the finances of it, what financial options they had. So before you even go, I would say that you should probably figure out what for you is important. So if the schedule doesn't really matter, but say that you really don't want to take on more student loans, then definitely talk to them about the financials. If the financials aren't really important to you because you know you can afford to go to school, but the schedule might interfere with something, then that's something that you're going to want to look at. It's really going to be individual, but most of the time I say that you should ask about the scheduling. You should ask about their courses and what they include. And then you should ask about finances and how to go about paying for the courses and what the course cost is. Those are all very important things that you should know. And I will never tell you to go to a boot camp just because it's high priced. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the right fit for you. The reason boot camps have made such a huge impact is because they all have an individual experience. And that should be what you're looking at in terms of which boot camp you go, is what fits best for you and which experience are you after.
Awesome. That's great advice. And I would also say, if people on this call haven't yet, schedule your coaching session with a Career Karma coach. We have pretty much coaches that are attending all the schools, and so they'll help you prepare and realize that the coding bootcamps, they also want to like help you learn more. So they have free prep courses, which is always a great way to start. And you also have people on Career Karma in squads, so make sure to join the various squads. We have an HTML squad on the app. I know Craig just created a JavaScript workshop squad. So yeah, keep joining those.
Another thing I didn't think about with the boot camps too is even if you're pretty sure you know where you want to go, because like I had my heart dead set on Kenzie thanks to my fabulous Career Karma coach who happened to let me know that they were in Kenzie and just made me fall in love with it because of their experience. Even when you know you want to go to that, I would suggest applying to a couple of other schools because those free resources though, learning from multiple sources will help you retain the information just a little bit better and makes it easier to pick it up and put it down as you go along.
Yeah. As a temperature check for people on this call tonight, does making a website now seems a little easier to you? I want to hear from people who don't have a website. Does it seem a little easier?
Definitely.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and it's all about taking small steps. Every single person who has a job in tech started where you are now. The only difference is that they probably gave up, started again, and kept going and kept learning more and more things until they actually were able to like call themselves engineers, go through the job search and get a job. And as long as you don't stop, you can always be in Career Karma. You're never going to get kicked out, and you can always learn from others. You can attend workshops and keep going. Don't stop, and give us feedback too, so we know how to make it better and invite Mia again and other guests to come and help you.
Yeah, I definitely like to continue working on this project with you and kind of build as we go. It'd totally be a fun little experience to just kind of tweak it as we go and learn new little elements.
Would people like that? Would people want Mia to come back? Let's see. So
Oh,
there's an overwhelming.
That's amazing.
Okay. So I
Yeah.
think we'll speak to Mia and and talk about her schedule because
Yes.
you're a mom of 4, right?
Hmm?
You're a mother of 4.
Yeah.
So you have 4 kids. You're attending Kenzie, and you're making time to meet with us. So we definitely appreciate that. We do have a few minutes left if people have any last questions. Yeah.
I do. I have a really quick question.
Okay.
Mia, I was just wondering. First of all, it's really commendable that you have kids and you're doing this. Like that's really inspiring. I was also just gonna ask, like, when I know you're in Kenzie Academy, when are you gonna be done with it?
So Kenzie Academy, the specific course that I signed up for is a year-long course, and I did choose a longer boot camp because kids. So I wanted to be able to take my time learning it. So I will actually be done around the end of January of 2021. However, Kenzie does have the option in certain parts of their course that you can kind of move ahead, and so there's always that option should I be able to do so. So.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I was gonna do full time at Flatiron. I got in and everything.
Mhm.
Actually, I'm part of like one of the Flatiron cohorts right now.
Mhm.
So just finished up our first project, like CLI application. But recently, like I got the flu and I also have MS, so it takes me a long time to recover anyways from like, illnesses and like when I get infected. So then like I talked to my cohort lead and he said maybe I should move to part-time, maybe it's
Mhm.
more doable. So that's what I did. Like I moved to part-time. But I was just kind of feeling bummed about it because I was like, okay, that's longer that I'm not working as a programmer and not in the workforce. So I was feeling kind of bummed about that. So that's why I was just,
One of the biggest things that I'm going to tell you, honey, especially as somebody with disabilities in the coding environment, is never get down when your body gets you down. This is something that we're going to be able to push through, that we can do even on our worst of days. And being able to take time for our body to make sure that we don't push ourselves too hard is very, very important. You can do this, and I know that with the determination and the resources that you have, you're going to get through it. So please, please don't feel like you gave up and don't feel like you're doing anything wrong, because you've got this. You will powerhouse through this, okay?
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Hey, Maya. Can you please come back, but next time when you do, if you can, if it's possible that you take like one subject, like
Yeah.
if you take like tags, for example, and then if you're talking about tags or you're talking about CSS and the attributes and just concentrate on that, I think it's going to help a lot of us because, but I don't even know, like if you take it one step at a time,
Mhm.
when people have challenges, they can relate and then learn something from it. I don't know if
Why
it's
don't we
possible.
post that in the discussions? Like if there's certain things that you guys would like to go
Yeah.
over, I know that they're going to post
Okay.
the discussions page. Why don't we go in there? We can have a whole vote on what we go over next time, because I guarantee you guys I'll be back. I like helping too much.
And as people have questions about HTML, CSS, uploading their web pages, use discussions. For people who are just brand new, it's new people inside of the app. It's on the community tab, and it's a way for you to ask a question and get it answered by one of the squad leaders or other people in the community. And so if you ask the question, we'll make sure it gets answered. And in a few weeks, you'll get to answer someone else's questions to pass that back to them.
Okay, last question, please, before you all kick me out. Maya, I know you do UI UX design. I am also the end goal is UI UX design, front end, and of course, I've started doing my low fidelity prototypes and stuff. But how did you learn? I don't know what tool you use, whether Sketch or Figma. But I'm looking more into Figma. But how were you able to learn Figma, and how quick was it?
Honestly, I used Lambda's free course for UX design to learn Figma, and I found Figma challenging but worth it. It wasn't the easiest process. It took me about a week to really be comfortable using it, and I had to spend about 2 hours in it every day of that 7-day period. So, I mean, it's not the simplest thing, but once you start getting the hang of it, it does kind of compound and build.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, folks. It's time, and we appreciate everyone, especially on the East Coast, staying up late to invest in themselves, finding that time in their busy lives. to do this. So many great questions. I love the energy. I love that we had at some point 70 people on this call, and it's just a testament what people can build if they can just come together and help one another. So shout out to all of you. Huge shout out to Mia. You're an inspiration, Mia, and I can't wait to see you in tech.
It's going to be fun, that's for sure, but you guys will be there 100% of the way.
Also, there's roughly 40-ish people like still in this chat. If we want Mia to come back, I mean, obviously she's gonna come and like help out and stuff. But what would really, really like motivate her to just keep helping and everything is taking your projects and posting those things on like discussions and getting that out there. You know, like
Oh yeah,
that'll be a huge boost. Just
because then I can see what you guys did, and I can see where you guys are at, and I can see where you guys might be having problems, and if a lot of people are having the same problems, we can address that next time.
Mitchell had a great question. So discussions, it's at the top of our community screen. There's your messages, discussions, and people. When you go into discussions, you'll see there's a portfolio projects. There's a portfolio projects discussion, so you can drop your links in there. If you have questions about your code, you can post inside of the beginners discussion. We're everywhere, so just create something, post it, and we'll make sure that Mia sees it, and I'm sure she'll respond too.
Always.
Yeah.
all right.
All right, everyone, let's break in. See you tomorrow for the JavaScript workshop. Good night, everyone.
All right, good night.
Bye.